We finally have a fleshed out, perfected bleed build for all of you here today, using Whirlwind, of course, the best speed farming, maybe tied with Sorc, but pretty much the best speed farming build in the game. We can now farm higher, more efficiently, you're tankier, so if you have any struggles right now with the shout cooldowns, fury management, look no further because we're doing something crazy here, and I'll give you a sneak peek before I jump straight into it. We're using a two-handed axe. Let's get it. What up, Barbarians? It is Murdering, talking about a brand new Whirlwind Barbarian bleed build. And now I know what you're thinking. Murder, what are you doing? You made the no bleed when everyone was playing the bleed. Now people are swapping to the build you put out here, and you're talking about this bleed build. Don't worry, don't worry. The mace no bleed build is still completely fine. You might be thinking, what the hell is the point of this video? Why am I even making this if the mace build is fine? If you don't want to switch to Hammer of the Ancients, which is the pushing build, the bleed Whirlwind variant is going to last you more consistently all the way to level 100 and pushing higher into 100. What does that mean? So the current no bleed build falls off heavily when pushing nightmare dungeons. Shouldn't really say the no bleed build, I should be saying Whirlwind in general just suffers miserably because of the nightmare dungeon mechanics and the really high difficulties. So I was like, instead of being hard capped at very low nightmare levels once you're 100, because I can tell you right now, if you have a very well geared character in the 70s, you're probably pushing higher tier nightmare dungeons than you will at 100. Just think about that for a second. That's what scaling in this game is like. Scaling is just crazy, especially with armor, damage reduction, all of the things that you kind of take for granted when you're leveling up. Then the mobs start getting stronger and stronger, and as they start out leveling you, it's really hard to keep up stat wise, because you can get, in theory, perfect stat gear at like level 75, where you can just do 40 levels above which you normally can. So that becomes much less the case as you slowly get to 100. As you can see, I am 100. So we're going to talk about the build here. So the first thing I did was, we're using an axe. You might be thinking, Murder, 84% damage to healthy enemies? What are you thinking? The amount of crit damage you're losing from that is insane. So let me explain to you why I picked the axe. I'm pretty sure that's a really good starting spot. Let's head on over to the Paragon board. We are going to be talking about this right here. Once you start getting a developed Paragon board, and like I said, this is going to be a build that's going to be more suitable to kind of sustain you for longer in Whirlwind if you just refuse to play or swap to other builds, which I'm kind of there. I'll make a separate video on the issues with Hammer of the Ancients. But if you're like me and you really like spinning, it's fast, it's efficient, and you want just to push a bit higher, Cleaver comes in because the options of glyphs after you hit the 5 glyph mark, really number 4. There are 4 really powerful glyphs, and they start to fall off dramatically after that. All of the options of the sword glyph, the mace glyph, they're very underwhelming. The cleaver glyph, however, as you can see, 12% multiplicative increased critical strike damage. That is massive for a glyph. On top of that, you do get the additive 32.7% on a baseline of 40 out of 40 strength in the Paragon board, but I really wanted to try this and it's been working out. The damage is really good. So what's up with this new bleed build? What's new? What's not new? We're going to dive into the gameplay first, and I'm going to show you a tier 72. You heard that right, tier 72 speed farm. Now, what's funny is the speed farm capabilities of this build here, the bleed variant that I'm currently making with an axe, is very close to the pushing threshold, which means that if I add 10 tiers to this, I start to struggle significantly. Now, why is this different from the mace version? The mace version is going to struggle like in the mid 60s. So we're talking speed farm here on a 72, and if you play Whirlwind and you're level 100, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to fire up this gameplay here. We're about 20 levels over, and I will show the affixes. Let's pause this right here. So we get increased healing. Like who cares? Killing a monster enrages monsters near it, making them deal more damage. Okay, so this was a very risky affix to take. And one important thing to note, the people who say it doesn't matter what affixes are on your nightmare tier dungeons when you're speed farming because you just blow through it anyways, that means they're farming a level way lower than they should be or can be in a showcase, meaning you're not really seeing the potential of the build, or the build probably falls off significantly when trying to farm actual content here. Next we have Unstoppable, doesn't matter to me. The damage dealt as cold can be an issue, but usually that's not the bad one. Poison's a really bad one, so overall this isn't the worst mod, but the enrage thing kind of ramps up the damage. We're probably getting the equivalent damage of like a 75 here, so let's just kind of play this and walk through this, and you will be able to see, of course, I'm level 100 here, and the mobs are, my cursor will ever mouse over it, probably the next pack. Okay, so 126. So we're plus 126 here in speed farming. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is the skill choice. And don't worry, I will have a planner in the pinned description here. But them pulsing, first of all, that deals a ton of damage to you. But I'm not using a single generator on this build, which you won't need. We'll get into why you won't need that. But I'm using Iron Skin. I think it's called Iron Skin, right? Yeah, Iron Skin. It gives you a shield. It's like a good version of Temerity. So you can see I'm pretty much just blasting through this. Unfortunately, it's Free the Prisoners, which in this map specifically of the Infested Mineworks is kind of a long one here. So what do I do when I have the cooldown up? When these mobs are about to explode, I will use the Iron Skin or Iron Blood, I really don't remember what the skill's called, to make sure I'm not just getting one shot by these mobs blowing up here. But as you can see, everything's really, really smooth so far. We're one-shotting, and the damage to healthy, while it's not big, it's still effective. Because like I said, we're speed farming, right? We're not progressing here. We're not spending 50 seconds on a mob, especially elites. When we get to the first elite, you will be able to see that much better for sure. But yeah, here we're pretty much just blasting through here. And you have to be careful. I mean, if you want to speed farm efficiently, if things can't one-shot you, you're probably punching way below you really should be. And I'm going to skip all the shrines just to make this a more efficient run here. Don't ever skip shrines. I'm doing it for the video showcase to kind of show you that there's no real cheese here. As you can see, I did just use my Iron Skin right there, which I'm taking a ton of damage from this elite here. I probably shouldn't have pulled the double elite pack with the damage reduction that just spawned on the right, which I noticed way too late here. But keep in mind on my potions, I'm not just chugging them because I have decent sustain with the build I am. I mean, we are getting 10% increased healing, but it's not playing a huge factor. The skills are going to matter a ton for this build. Okay, so that was smooth here. That would be scary for a lot of builds. That pull there would be scary for a lot of builds. Whirlwind builds, you're running away. Like most Whirlwind builds that aren't this build, you're running away. In every bleed variant build I've seen so far, I don't know, I saw a video the other day that had a ton of views, and it was like the worst bleed build I've ever seen. The guy was struggling, I think it was like 5 levels above, and his health was just getting chunked. I hope a lot of people aren't copying that build, because you're just going to get steamrolled the higher level you get in this game. And that's not what you want. That's what I'm trying to avoid. And again, we're going to skip the protection shrine here. And let me see. There's a part where I die, and it's really important you see. Okay, so this is another risky pack. We have a triple elite here. We have the pylons that are doing a ton of damage. They're enraged now, so they're dealing, like I said, probably 3 tiers higher of the raw damage. So these are things you have to watch out for. As you can see, I hit my Iron Skin right before they exploded. If I didn't, I'm dead. So there's some thought that has to go into this. You can't just kind of face roll through it. If you want to face roll through, you just drop to, I don't know, tier 60, tier 62, 63 here. So I'm not going to show too much more gameplay, but I do want to get to the part where I died, because it's really important for you to see that I died, first of all. In a speed farm content, speed farm should be easy peasy, whatever. I think it's coming up here. And if it's not coming up here, I'm going to skip through it, because I did AFK. As you can probably see, the total clip's 13 minutes long because I had to read up on something. But let me go and find where I ran into my struggles. Okay, so no deaths so far. This was another scary pull. If you just look at the pulsing damage that my character's about to take here, this is where, again, Iron Skin, I mean, I'm vulnerable right now. The Iron Skin will just save you, right? You may be worried, what about Fury generation? You'll be good. You will be good. I'm not even running Fury cost reduction on my necklace. So I'm double gimping myself, but it's perfect for this speed build. Okay, so I definitely die in this section here. These mobs are significantly harder than the spider mobs. Yeah, so this isn't where I died, I'm pretty sure. Let me just skip through this. So this is a triple rare pack here. We're taking some damage, but I'm not going to waste too much time here. And I didn't struggle here. Okay, I think I'm about to do the pull, where I get one shot. Let me see if it's here. Yeah, so this is the pull. Okay, so we have, at the moment, one rare. Is there one? Yeah, there's one rare. Or elite. I don't know why I'm calling them rare. Okay, no, we have two elites here. We have like a Banshee elite, and then we have a... So I ran away. I'm noticing already I'm getting dumpstered right now. So I ran away. I have one potion left. I dashed out to grab a potion here, and this was a huge mistake here. You never want to enrage an elite with that flame aura. And as soon as I pulled into the second pack, I'm going to show you the exact realization that I was going to die. So here's the moment. I'm running up. As soon as I saw those, I guess, pentagrams on the ground, I was like, okay, I just pulled one extra mob here, and I am now going to be permanently enraging this guy as I'm killing the mobs around it. And I knew from my health bar, when I just started watching it drop over and over again, I said, this is GG. So at this point, the goal was to kill as many mobs as possible and then die. I knew I was going to die 100% after pulling it. So yeah, that's what happened there. And then I actually proceeded to die, I think, 2 more times, as if things couldn't get any worse, because somehow I pulled the chest mob by just running by it and not clicking on it. Didn't know that was a thing. I usually click on it, so maybe that's always how it worked, but adding suppression and another elite to the mix here while I'm killing mobs and enraging everything, this was death number 2. So these are things you have to look out for. Whether you're speed farming, pushing, all of these mistakes can happen here. I was getting excited because I was getting them low here. My potions are at 3 out of 9. Like I said, there are now 3 elites on the board here. You don't want to be in this situation, so I had a choice to make. I can finish off the 2 elites here and just die to the flame guy again because I'll have no potions, or gamble it all and try to kill the flame guy. So what did I do? You saw quite clearly what I did there. Did not go for the gamble. I just killed the 2 and then moved on. So that's the basics of the gameplay that is to run here. As you can see, I did in fact clear the tier 72 once I went back to finish off that mob. It was much easier when I wasn't permanently enraging the guy from killing mobs around it. So these are things you need to know, and I learned my mistake for sure. If you pull a bad sequence of elite mobs together, it will kill you no matter what you're doing. Whether you're farming, you're pushing. I mean, if you're pushing, it's kind of GG. You have to be really careful. But even if you're farming, if you're one-shotting elites by farming, and like, what do I mean by farming? When you're farming, you either want experience, glyph experience, or both. The most efficient way is to get both. So if you want both, and you want experience and glyph experience, you should not be farming 3 levels above, 10 levels above. You want to be farming what I'm doing, 26 levels above, because this build can do it. And like I said, we're going to dive straight into the build now so you can see how to do that. And you only really die to really nasty stuff like this. Okay, so now that we went over that, let's talk about, well, first we'll go over the gear here. As you can see, I'm slowly, health feels better. I'm going to say this right now. You're going to look at my gems and say, Murdy, you have 2 blue gems, 2 red gems. What are you doing? You're a mess. You're all over the place on purpose. So health feels better. I noticed this, I don't know, a few days ago when I was pushing. I don't know what it is. It's just the safer bet. Technically, you get more survivability with damage reduction while fortified, but some of the most dangerous survivability checks you'll experience in any content is while you're ramping up to fortify. As much as I'd like to say it's instant, it's not quite instant, and in those seconds while building up to fortify, that's where it can be lethal, and that's where health kind of outshines the additional damage reduction, because honestly, once you get your shouts going and you're fortified, that extra DR isn't going to make or break you living or die. However, getting to that point is very, very important, so I'm going to full swap to red gems. You can make the best decision for yourself. So what do we have for aspects? Like I said, there's going to be a pinned build planner, but if you want to follow along with me, do that for sure. Cooldown on the helmet, very important. Armor on the helmet, this is one thing. Okay, guys, you can one-shot anything in this game at any point in the game. What you can't do is survive anything in the game. Start getting armor on all your pieces. If you don't now, you're going to hit the higher levels, you're going to get absolutely demolished, right? A lot of people say there's an armor cap, right? The armor cap is only showing you, as we can see here, enemies of equal level. Anytime there's an enemy above equal level, it lowers the amount you're reducing in physical damage taken. This is really important. People are talking about armor caps all the time. You're not going to hit it. If you're efficiently farming 20, 25, 30 levels above you, you are not going to hit your armor cap. It's just not possible. Even with disobedience, which is like the most broken thing ever. I think I get up to like 14,000 armor, something like that. Something a really, really high number, and I'm nowhere close to the 100% mark on the mobs that I'm farming. So again, armor, all stats, strength, cooldown reduction on the helmet, and the aspect is Relentless Berserker. Core skills have a chance to extend berserking. If it's a crit, double the chance. Next, we have Iron Blood. This is huge. This is why the bleed variant is so important, because you get so many extra things. And if you notice from that clip, I'm not actually doing bleed damage. I probably should have specified that earlier in the video, but I'm not doing bleed damage. I'm using bleed to my benefit instead. I'm using bleed for increased raw damage, which we'll get to on how I'm doing this, increased damage reduction, and of course the typical disembowel glyph, which is going to be lowering my shout cooldowns. And I still had to run away a couple times because the shouts weren't perfectly off of cooldown, but it's just because my rolls are decently worse than some of my other gear sets. We have armor, triple damage reduction, and this imprint Iron Blood, very strong for bleeding builds. Gain 4% DR up to 20% per each nearby bleeding enemy. They're going to be bleeding all the time. Now notice I'm not using gores. If you don't have gores, many people don't have gores, you're fine. I have ripping on this. We want max crit rate. Crit rate to injured is nice for elites. Once they get low health, you're just blasting them with crits. Because like I said, you're not one-shotting elites, or you shouldn't be if you're farming efficiently. +4 rank to Whirlwind is the obvious one. Attack speed does not matter for this build at all. Next we have a chest piece. Iron Skin grants Unstoppable and 20% damage reduction, mandatory. Don't obsess and stop obsessing over damage. You need to survive. That's going to be the key here. So we have triple DR and armor here. Not the best pants, but I have a better pair of pants for my barbarian, but I don't have a second max roll Iron Skin, and this is huge. You need Iron Skin. Next we have boots here. Fury cost, all stats, movement speed. Good. Next we have my mace here. I have Edge Masters because I don't have a second max rolled Edge Masters. What would I want here? Limitless Rage. Where is it? Limitless Rage, because 60% multiplicative is obviously much better than 40, so I'm missing out on a lot of damage. Like a lot of damage. So the fact that I'm even speed farming this high with this major loss here is kind of crazy. So we have Edge Masters here. We have Dust Devils. This isn't a meme. I actually find this is pretty consistent here because this can proc vulnerables on distant enemies who are like engaging you. Why does it do that? Because of the glyph exploit, it applies vulnerability to the first hit enemy, and the Dust Devils count as a first hit, and they do a decent amount of damage. I think 200,000 to 300,000 damage at level 100, so obviously it's going to scale down for you, but it's a respectable amount of damage for sure here. Next we have Limitless Rage, which should be on a two-hander, and then finally the main weapon here, you want the Dire Whirlwind. For rings, Echoing Fury, low roll, but look at this ring. This is like a 300 million gold ring here. Almost perfect rolls across the board. Next we have Bold Chieftain's Loop. Not the best ring, it's okay. And then we have Choker of Disobedience. Put Disobedience on your necks. I don't care what build you're doing, put it on your necks. Major, major, major. Now that we have that set, let's head on over to the expertise. I am getting increased critical strike chance against vulnerable enemies by using an axe. So that's the second benefit here. If you notice, when you put any weapon technique into this slot here, you're only getting the top bar, so you're not getting the bottom bar. So by using the axe, everyone pretty much uses the axe in their technique slot. Since I'm actually using an axe as a weapon, I'm getting that 10% increased crit chance against vulnerable targets, and they're always vulnerable when you first engage them, giving me much higher sustain and crits without having to add things like stuns, slows, all that good stuff, which we do have anyways. And then I have two-handed sword expertise, mostly because the others aren't that good, so this is what's giving me the bleed along with Berserker Ripping. Now let's talk about the skill tree. This is the bread and butter of the build. The first skill doesn't matter. If you cannot take Iron Blood, is that the name? Let's look at the name. Okay, if you cannot take Iron Skin and you need to take a generator instead, you can take a Lunging Strike. Probably wouldn't put 3 points in, 2 points is fine. Or you can take Flay. Although, again, I don't think you're going to need to use... No, you don't want Flay. You want Lunging Strike. So take Lunging Strike if you think you're going to need it. If not, just put 2 points in whatever and forget about it. Next, we have Whirlwind. Enhanced Whirlwind. We don't have Furious Wind. We are taking more on-hit damage. This is why I said it's a bleed build, but it's not really a bleed build. We're still front-loading our damage. The bleeds are all for secondary purposes here. We still take Pressure Point, 3 out of 3 there. 5 out of 5 Rallying Cry, enhanced into Tactical. I have the +3 defensive to my neck, so I can put 0 points into Iron Skin. If you cannot put 0 points into Iron Skin, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take 1 point out of Invigorating Fury, which I haven't even got to yet. And you're going to go up here and you're going to put 1 point into Iron Skin. 1 point is going to be perfectly fine for what we're using it for survivability layer because you're using the aspect. So next we have Challenging Shout into Enhanced and of course Tactical. 1 point into Warcry, Enhanced Warcry, Power Warcry. Probably shouldn't be taking a Mighty Warcry unless you think you really need that instant Fortify. But like I said, you're going to cap out on Fortify because of the Paragon Board either way. Next we have Booming Voice, 3. Guttural Yell, 3 for incredible damage reduction, 1 in aggressive resistance, 3 in Prolific Fury here. Then we do want No Mercy here. No Mercy is going to be proccing from our bleeds, which is going to slow all the enemies. 3 into Pit Fighter, 1 into Thick Skin, 3 into Counter Offensive. Now one thing to notice again, my neck is very suboptimal. I have triple wallop on my neck and I'm not using a bludgeon weapon. So I'm losing out on even more damage here. So realistically, if I min-max this entire build, I could almost get to the point where I'm speed farming much closer to tier 80, which is crazy for Whirlwind because most players can't even do tier 75 in a push build, not a speed farm build. So we have 3 into Heavy Handed here, 1 into Tempered Fury, and 3 into Invigorating Fury. I like this talent a lot here, mostly because it synergizes really well with my build. What do I mean by my build? So the last point really quickly is Unbridled Rage. So as I mentioned before, I do not have resource reduction on my necklace. So my Whirlwinds are costing about 46. This wasn't necessarily on purpose, but it puts me on par with a lot of players because a lot of players won't have double resource gen, Fury cost on the boots, cooldown here, cooldown there. They're not going to have it all. So I said, instead of wasting time getting a new necklace just to kind of showcase this build, let me just leave it off. Let me kind of see how the struggle is with Fury a little bit, and how can I take advantage of that, which is perfect for people who have been struggling. I figured out that if you're spending more Fury, you're healing more. And the heal's not huge, but it can save you 1 to 2 potions per encounter, which is nice. The next thing we take, of course, is Wrath of Berserker into 3 points, and now we talk about the Paragon. So what do we do for the Paragon? We actually have 6 glyphs and 7 boards. You can see this, what I did here, actually split off into 2 places from 1 board. So we have the typical here, getting life. The first one you want Martial for sure. The second one you probably want Disembowel second. If you're leveling and want to use this for leveling purposes, Disembowel gives you, not that. Yeah, so Disembowel gives you cooldown reduction when you kill an enemy that's bleeding and they're always bleeding. So that's probably good to take second, and you can swap it after that. From here, I actually go to this last, but look what we did here. So we went through and got our 6 glyphs, and I said, I can take a few things, increase damage while healthy, fortified, maximum life, armor, bludgeon weapon, we don't need that. I can go to a 7th glyph, but there's really no good 7th glyphs. You're going to notice that pretty quickly in this game, that the 7th glyph falls off significantly. So I said, what else can we do? So we started looking at the legendary nodes, and I said, hold on. Enemies that have been affected by your bleeding for 3 seconds or more, all the time, right? 3 seconds or more, take 12% multiplicative increased damage from you, from all sources. So this is kind of designed to increase bleeding damage, but if I have a bleed, a small bleed that does no damage, that's there to proc damage reduction only, I'm now getting 12% multiplicative damage from all sources of me. So what does this affect? This actually even affects your gores, as well as the dust devils, anything you can think of, it's going to apply to hemorrhage. So this was huge here. But getting back to my original point, disembowel second, then you definitely want wrath third, because the fury on crit is very, very strong. Then the fourth, I would probably take, I don't think might, I think the, well, progression, you can just stick cleaver for the multiplicative crit damage. I think you can go with a might where it's supposed to be. Might's giving us physical damage and armor. Like I said, armor is invaluable. We also have Hunter Killer. We got that in here. You can kind of use your discretion if you think this is worth it or not. If the 6 points don't seem worth it to you, I haven't really min-maxed where this could go. I would say an armor node. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, it's more than 6. It's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not 7, it is 6. So unfortunately, if you can make it to this node somehow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now there's no way to make it there. So you'd need 7, which means you'd have to take one of these like juiced up nodes with 49 out of 29 dex, take 1 point of dex out, and just get the extra armor. Because 200 armor is a ton of, I mean, it's 300 total. 300 armor is a lot of armor. I cannot stress that enough. If you're not building for survivability now, you're not a high enough level. And armor will never hurt you. You should be overkilling most content in this game pretty early on. So yeah, that's just a small point there. The next thing we have is the last one. We have exploit here. Now, I didn't mention getting exploit early, and mostly it's because I forgot about it. So if I had to go and walk myself back just a little bit here, I would say put exploit 4th if you're kind of new to the Paragon board, and then just swap the last one with cleaver for the multiplicative damage. Once you open that up, you can change around all of your glyphs here. The points will probably stay the same, just a couple points here and there based on where you're supposed to be stacking. But again, we have 249 out of 25 nodes. Is that correct? 49, yeah, so 249 out of 29 dexterity nodes, which is huge. And the important thing is we are hitting our rare node requirements on everything. 610 is the highest dex here. After I finished this off, I went back down, and this is where I went to the legendary node. If you want to take this early for more damage, you can for sure. And it's not too expensive, as you can see, 39,000 gold per refund cost. So if you want to put it on at one point and say, okay, I'm close to my next glyph, let me refund this board here. It's really simple. I mean, it can definitely add up, but it's not the most expensive thing you can do here. You can just keep setting it, desetting it when you're near a glyph node while you are progressing through. So like I said, it's just an overview of the Paragon board, and it works really well for me. So is this build going to be viable for the earlier stages of leveling? Absolutely. It's probably going to be easier, if I'm being completely honest, to use this build at an earlier level than it's going to be with the no bleed mace Whirlwind. The damage is very similar, and the way I added the bleed to this build doesn't affect the raw damage output too much. There's definitely going to be a raw damage difference between a bludgeon weapon and an axe. Why? Because Wallop is busted, and you're not getting the stun defensive layer. But I made up for that with other skill tree decisions. But Wallop is very strong, there's no doubt about it. You're not going to get this 15x multiplier anywhere else for an axe setup. You do get 12%, which is close from the glyph here, but I don't know, it is what it is. So that's going to conclude this build here. Gave you guys a showcase, we gave you a deep dive in the skill tree and the Paragon board. This build's pumping. Like I said, you follow this build, you will not die to anything, you will kill everything you need to kill until you're level 100 trying to push high nightmare dungeons. And you'll have even more fury than I have without taking any type of resource generator, because you're going to have most likely fury cost reduction on your necklace, where I do not have that. So that's going to conclude this video. If you like this content, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. I'll see you all in the next video.